Here is a testimonial for the highest paid part-time job in the world from Katrina Alexander.
So I'm approaching 3 years in this academy. All of my accounts have increased trading, investments, business, and personal accounts. This academy can produce results in all areas of your life when you do the work. Yes, you have to work on your psychology and mindset to get the results.
How you doing, everybody? This is David W. Williams, also known as the Retail Trader. Let me know what part of the country that you're coming out of. Let me know that you can hear me. Let's go ahead and get started, right? What I want to talk about, but what I want you to really start asking yourself, right, is this idea of Nepobabies, right? We're going to talk about what that is. Meritocracy, class, the meritocracy myth, and economic warfare. And what I want you to do is really start asking yourself, how do you think about these particular issues and how your thoughts about these particular issues are guiding your behavior in this particular economy? Because one of the things that I've tried to do on this particular channel is get you to examine how you think about certain things and how your belief systems around certain things are really driving a lot of your decision making and whether or not that's beneficial to you and your group. Because if I believe certain things that, one, are not true, but two, are not empowering to me and my group, I never could really put myself in a position of empowerment because I believe things that are disempowering for the environment that I live in. And so I'm not saying that you should violate your morals and principles, but what I am saying is that, do you believe certain things about certain things based on what you've been taught by other groups of people that are really designed to disempower you? They're really designed to make sure that your group never has any power. They're really designed to make sure that you can never expand your territory in this particular world, which means often you can never do the things that God is asking you to do because you're believing in mythology created by another group of people, and that mythology has really been designed to disempower you. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about, right? So the first thing that we're going to get into is this idea that capital has staying power, okay? Now, what I mean by capital has staying power is that capital can last longer than you can. Because why? You don't have the same amount of capital. Capital is not going to always be financial capital. Have a video on here. If you actually go through the archives, we talk about relationship capital. We talk about expertise capital. We talk about experience capital. But capital has staying power, okay? And that's just not going to be my opinion. That's just not my take. That's just not my commentary. So let me give an example so you can understand that this is just not me saying this and you saying, well, you know what, that's a really good perspective, and you go back to believe in a falsehood. You work for somebody right now today, right? If your job tells you this weekend, they text you and say, hey, you know what? Don't come into work. And we will let you know when we want you to come back. So your job reaches out to you. They say, hey, don't come into work, and we'll let you know when we need you to come back in, right? If you don't go back to work, you'll go broke before they do, right? You'll go broke before your job does, because the reason why you work for your job is because they have more financial capital than you in most situations, right? There can be some extenuating circumstances, but normally you're working for a particular organization because they have more financial capital than you, so they have the ability to pay you, right? That's why you're working for them. And so what we saw this weekend with the Sanders family is this principle that capital has more staying power than the people that they're dealing with. And so this is why, if you've been around long enough, you've seen with a lot of the players, when they say, hey, we're going to go on strike, we don't like these particular conditions, eventually they have to come back to work. Because why? The people that they're going on strike against have the ultimate staying power. Because why? They have all the money. They have all the financial capital. So if I go on strike to get more financial capital, often I have to go back to work within a certain amount of time. And it's always been unusual how short an amount of time professional athletes can go without working, right? Because to me, if you give me $20 million next year, I'm never going to have to go back to work again for anybody because I know what to do with the $20 million. The challenge is that a lot of professional athletes are very, very young. They may not know what to do. So if they can't work for 6 months to a year, it takes a big hit to them financially. So what we saw was that Sanders was going to get drafted when they decided to draft him. I didn't get to this whole big, I didn't really get the storyline. I really didn't get it, but I understand they need a story for the weekend because there's really not a player, even though I think that guy that comes out of Penn State is a monster. All right. I think he's going to be a monster for New York, but there's really not a player in this draft that we believe is what we call transcendent, which means it's going to be a superstar. So what they did was they latched on the story of a person who did not get drafted as opposed to the people that actually got drafted. It's real weird to me, but that's just the era that we're in, because we can't really talk about the Shannon Sharpe story because, you know, that's a legal case. They got to go through it. We really don't have discovery on that case yet. So they latched onto the story of a person who did not get drafted. And for some reason, we didn't talk about all the people that did get drafted, right? And I never believed that Sanders was going to be a transcendent player at the quarterback position. Still don't believe that now. My rating had him as a 3rd round pick at best. He got, 5th round. So he did drop a little bit. But I had him as a 3rd. I never had him as a 1st round pick. Didn't have him as a 2nd round pick. Had him as a 3rd round pick. And it wasn't because of any outside things. To me, his talent didn't really speak to him being worthy of a 1st round pick. I didn't see that when I watched him play. I thought it was second as a gamble. So let me kind of explain to you how this looks to me. Okay, so he goes to Cleveland, right? He's a 5th round pick, right? If I got that wrong, let me know in the comments. At that number, they can sign him for very little upfront money, right? They got 2 1st round picks next year. The quarterback class next year is supposed to be better than the quarterback class this year, right? So it's like an option play. My risk of capital is limited because when you're buying an option, you know what you're paying for the option. You can't lose more than that. You can never lose more than you pay. It's not a futures contract or forex contract, right? So even though it's a leverage situation, but you don't ever lose more than the principal, okay? So I can outlay X amount to get this guy into my organization at a very, very low cost structure, okay? I know that next year I have the opportunity to go into the 1st round twice. Based on my record, also, I believe they got Jacksonville's 1st round pick. He has 1 year to prove why he should still be here, because the only money that's going to be guaranteed is his upfront money. The year-to-year money will not be guaranteed. So we may have to outlay maybe $2 million to this guy over the 25 season, going into the 26 year, maybe $2 million, just to get him in here and to see what he has and for him to prove his worth in the NFL and also for this organization. So for an NFL team, that's not really a lot of money. That's a lot of money to me for somebody to say, hey, I'll give you $2 million to come work for us. I'll go to Salt Lake City and I'll be up there with said, right? Because that's a lot of money to me. But that's not a lot of money to an NFL team. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So they can outlay that. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Because why? We have the capital, right? So that's what I want you to understand. Very little of the money will be guaranteed. And then if you have some, if we have some discrepancies, let's go to SpoTrack, and then we can go to SpoTrack and we can figure it out, because SpoTrack has the contracts laid out and it shows you what the signing bonus is, what the upfront money is, yada, yada, yada. They got a really good website for that. So we don't have to argue about it. We can go to SpoTrack, right? But at his number, there's going to be very little money guaranteed to him, right? At that number. So it means that they don't have to outlay a lot of money to get him into the camp. He wasn't worth a 1st round pick. We have to guarantee a certain amount of money to him just to get him in the door. And we don't know if he works or not, right? Based on what we saw on tape. So they can hang around forever, because to me personally, it was starting to look like he should probably go to be a free agent. Let me tell you something else. And Erica really spoke about this earlier, and she knows this better than me because she really kind of understands how this media game merges with business. I'm from a city where a lot of people have played NFL football. She talked about she's from an environment where she has family members that have played NFL football. I have family members that have played professional basketball, but none of them football, right, on the pro level. But I'm from a city where a lot of people have played NFL football, and a lot of them have been really, really not only big-time college players, big-time college prospects, but also big-time NFL prospects. Like, and I'm not talking about like 2 or 3 people. I'm talking about like a lot of people. I'm from an area of the country. Our metro area has put out a lot of people. What's his name? Carter's from Apopka, which is right north of Orlando. Okay. And he went to Apopka High. Then he went up to Georgia to play football. Now he in the NFL, because they had a parade for him when I was down in Orlando around the Thanksgiving time. They had a parade for him, right? What threw me off until I went and did my research, because from my understanding, from the people that I know have gotten drafted, normally, especially if you're a higher round pick, you already kind of know where you're going to go. It's not a surprise. Sometimes they kind of do I don't know what you want to call it. They do a switcheroo on certain people. But most of the guys that was in that green room on Thursday they knew kind of where they were going, because you already have relationships through your agent to tell you where they think you're going to go. So I didn't believe that Shedeur day one had no idea he wasn't going first round. I don't believe that. But it works for what they're trying to build with this media thing, because trust and believe, all the first day's been recorded, all the day two's been recorded, all of this day's been recorded. It's content that we can now repurpose later, and we can also use to build out this story and to build out this narrative, right? Deion already explained to you in his Hall of Fame presentation that this is what he does. He explained that he gave you the script, so I don't know why people are like surprised by it. He gave you his game plan. So what I'm saying is that I don't believe with Deion having his connections to the NFL and Deion acting as his agent, they had no idea he wasn't going day one. I don't believe that, because I've known too many guys that have gone day one from my city, and they knew they was going day one, or they knew they was going day two, right? And I'm from a city that, especially our metro area, has put out a lot of NFL players. Like it's not even a big thing for us for you to go to the NFL. Like, okay, cool, we keep it pushing. We're not even having no big party for you. Like, it's not even like that where I'm from. In other parts of the country, celebrity football, it's not even that big of a deal to us, right? I know more guys that have washed out and not made it than guys that have made it, because that's just how it goes. It's not like this real big thing to us. Apopka has put out like so many NFL players, it's ridiculous. They got two Hall of Famers from NFL, two Hall of Famers that put out from that particular area, Orange County. You go north up, Keith Rivers from Lake Mary. You go all the way out to Polk County. You got those two twins that played in the NFL a long time. People know that Ray from Polk County. It's just ridiculous. So it's really not that big of a deal. But I don't believe for a second that the Sanders team, did not know he wasn't going first round. So now it's just a waiting game to try to figure out who's going to pull our number. And you just got to wait, because why? Capital has staying power. They're not under any pressure to bring you in, because let me explain something to you. If Sanders never gets drafted, the NFL is still the NFL, right? And everybody that is so caught up in this story, they'll move on also, right? So this is a good weekend story. But if Sanders never gets drafted, and that's just not my commentary, if Sanders never gets drafted, right, the NFL is still the NFL, because you know what? Somebody didn't get drafted last year, and your life didn't change one bit, did it? So, repeat myself. Somebody didn't get drafted last year, and you still got the same life. Is that correct or incorrect? Let me know in the comments. Somebody didn't get drafted last year. Somebody didn't make the NFL last year. They went to camp and got cut. Somebody got cut during the season, and you still got the same life, don't you? Is your life better or worse because somebody didn't make the NFL? You see how this works? Is the NFL better or worse because somebody didn't make the NFL? Philly and Kansas City still played in the Super Bowl. Is that incorrect or correct? Let me know if that's correct or correct, right? So these things still went on because you're dealing with institutions that have large amounts of capital. And so they're going to stand the test of time, and all the rest of the stuff going to fade away. And so one of the reasons why you build an organization is so you're never dependent upon one person, right? So it doesn't matter how big, Tom Brady was everything in the NFL. Tom Brady is no longer in the NFL, and the NFL is still the NFL. That's why you build an organization. That's why you build redundancy in your business. So it's never based around one person. That's something I'm working on right now. I've learned a lot from Erica about that particular concept. So if one person goes down, the whole ship don't go down, because why? It's not based around one person. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So this is a great weekend story. There's some things that we can pull out of it, but you got to understand, when you're dealing with capital and when you're dealing with institutions that have large amounts of capital, and the NFL just don't have financial or economic capital, they have network capital. They get certain tax breaks because they got relationships with politicians. They get breaks on being able to build stadiums, things of that nature. They got a lot of things going for them that allows them to stand the test of time. So while you fade away, they still stay here. And your life is still your life no matter what happens over there. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So you really got to understand that, or else you'll get caught up in what they got going on, and you still going to have the same life no matter what happens. Okay? So Sanders is playing for Cleveland. I wouldn't want to go there. Cleveland's a graveyard. Okay? They are a graveyard for football players. They have probably one of the worst organizations in football. Cleveland fans gonna get mad and they're gonna tell me about how in 1887, jumping Jimmy Jack Lee won the Ohio, national championship for Cleveland. Doesn't matter. Cleveland has had a terrible team for decades. They are a terrible run organization. It doesn't matter who is the owner. I think it's very unfortunate he went to this particular team. I would have preferred him to come to Atlanta because I think that's a better look for him, right? But Cleveland is Cleveland. They paid a guy, $240 million guaranteed, and the guy can't play. This is what Cleveland does. So he may get lucky and they may give him the same deal, right? But Cleveland played a guy, $240 million, and the dude can't play football. This is what Cleveland does. So I don't like the fact that he went to a badly run organization because I think that's not going to be good for his career at his young age. But he got to just go with it. I would prefer him to just be a free agent, walk onto a team. Like I say, Atlanta's a great opportunity because we know they're going to get rid of Kirk Cousins. So you only got to worry about Penix because Kirk Cousins ain't going to play here. They ready to get rid of him. They just got to find somebody to take his contract. He's dead out here. He's dead, right? And they're a better run organization as opposed to go to Cleveland. Cleveland is a cemetery for players, right? Outside of Garrett, who else really doing something out there? You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So that's what I'm trying to say is that people are getting caught up in it. It's a great story for the weekend, but to me, they're not really seeing the real story. But you really got to understand capital has staying power. And if you don't believe me, again, if your job tells you we don't need you to come back to work, you will go broke before your job does. That's all you need to realize. We ain't got to get no more complicated than that. If your job tells you this weekend, don't show up on Monday, and then we'll call you, we need you to come in. You'll be stressed out for money before your job is, right? That's just a fact of life. So always remember that capital has staying power. So when you get into negotiations with large capital institutions, their attitude is that we'll just wait you out. And we'll wait you out and wait you out and wait you out and wait you out. And then after we wait you out long enough, you'll be more open to negotiation the way we want it to go. Right? So that's something that we want to talk about real quick, right? So now we're going to go into this next point. We're going to talk about Nepo babies, okay? Big up to Black women making money, Miss Cherie. Forgot her last name. But Miss Cherie, she often talks about this concept of Nepo babies. And the reason why I want to go into this is because, I think many of us, we look at things incorrectly based on how we've been programmed and how we've been educated, and then we wonder why things don't work. It's because of how we've been programmed and how we've been educated. Okay, so the definition of a Nepo baby is somebody whose career is influenced or at least facilitated by parents' established careers. Okay, I saw a lot of conversation this weekend, right, about Dion and his influence on his children. Okay, but I want you to realize something, especially in America, in the West, but also in Europe too. Being a Nepo baby is a thing. It's a real thing, right? And so it's unusual to me to where other people are allowed to engage in nepotism. But when it comes to a Black family, most importantly, a Black man, right, engaging in nepotism, it's seen as a negative. What Dion did with his son, anybody that's played sports in real life and is not lying to their audience has seen this a million times, right? So what's the name of the guard? And I know y'all know it, but I'm going to ask y'all to just engage with me. The guard that used to play for the Knicks and also played for Tennessee for his father. Y'all remember him? Right? Y'all remember the guard that played a long time for the Knicks. He played for Detroit too, my bad. Then he played for the Knicks, but a lot of people know him for the Knicks. But he played at college for his own father. Okay? Anybody that's really played sports is not lying to their audience. They seen the same setup that you seen between Dion and his son. They seen that setup. That's not a new setup. That's not an unusual setup. Okay? So why would a father break down all those barriers in sports, learn the game, learn how it plays, and then his children want to play the same sport that he played, and then he act like he don't know nothing? Right? Now, I know that's what y'all want a Black man to do, but why would he do that if he had any kind of intelligence or any kind of sense? So something that Erica talked about is he's 100% correct. We've been programmed to have a psychological space for people. So if you are a Black man we've been programmed to have a psychological space for you, right? So we got these character avatars that we want you to play into. And if you don't play into these character avatars, we often don't know how to deal with you. I've dealt with that a lot in my life, right? And I'm not saying that to put on airs. I'm just being real with you, right? So we don't have a psychological space, or we don't have a character avatar for a black man who's successful that wants to engage in nepotism with his children. We don't really have that, and it's on a high profile. We don't have that. That's why they had the same issue with LeBron, right? Because who is he to try to manipulate the situation the way his son plays NBA ball? Who is he to do that? But why wouldn't he do that? Because he know that's the easiest way for the people. They're going to have to deal with my son because they got to deal with me. So I carry the weight for my son. What's wrong with that? Right? Why would he do all that work and then he let them people just do his son any old kind of way? That's how they do everybody else. You're not going to do my child like that. And I carry the weight to where you can't do that. Because if you do him like that, you're doing me like that. And you're not going to do me like that. That's why you put all them years of work in. So you can put that call in and say, hey, it's going to go like this. It's going to go like that. And people got to respect your call. Right? So I don't understand what the issue is, but I do know what the issue is, that we don't have a psychological space for a black man that does that. Right? While claiming he should do that. Okay? So Dion wanted to guide his sons, and really his son, through this process. He wants to have a big influence on his son. He really wanted to set his son up for success. So that's something that we used to say when we play sports. We used to say, hey, you know, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put you in position to be successful. We're going to set you up for success. So if Dion's attitude is that I'm going to manage this situation where my son could be put in the best situation to be successful, right? And that's what I'm going to do, because I know all the little tricks and the things that happen in football. Why? Because I played it forever, right? So I know what kind of games they're going to play. So I'm going to set my son up for success because I know where all the trap doors are at. I know where all the things are at. So that's what I'm going to do. Why is that a problem? That's what they're doing for Manning out there in Texas. Manning been set up to be successful in Texas. But when it's them, that's not an issue, right? But he's been set up. Everything about his life has been set up for him to be a successful quarterback. Everything. But that's not an issue when they do it for him, because we have a psychological space for that. We do not have a psychological space for a black man doing that for his children. We just don't. We need to just admit that and move on. So it seems weird to us. So then we say, well, you know, he's this, he's that, and that. But what you have is a black man to say, you know what? I'm going to set this thing up. I'm going to essentially gamify this situation, right? To where my son looks good, right? That's what I'm going to do. And it's obvious, but he's not the first person that's done this. So we got to always ask ourselves, how come we have an issue? And a lot of this commentary around what teams didn't want to deal with Dion, yada, 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 this, that, and the third. There was not going to be no dealing with Dion because he's going to be coaching football at Colorado, which is going to take up his full time. His son going to be playing NFL football. How he going to have time to do both things? This don't even make no sense. But it's the idea that a black man should not be actively involved, not only his children's life, but he should not try to gamify the situation to make sure his children is going to be successful. But I'm going to show you how other people have done this and have other people. We celebrate these narratives around other people training their children to be very, very successful. Now, I don't like the fact that it's sports, but here's the reality. Dion knows sports best. All his money came out the sports game. So that's what he knows, right? I personally think we push too many black children into sports, but that's what he knows best. But you don't have to do it with sports. You can do it with what you do. But we celebrate when other ethnic groups, right, train their children to be extremely successful. They're very intentional in trying to make sure that children are successful. And we celebrate it. But when it's a black man, especially, that's when we run into a problem with it. Again, we don't have a space in our mind for this type of stuff. So the Sanders family, they're like a bunch of aliens to a lot of us because they are a financially successful black family. You have a black man that's very active in his children's life, and he's trying to set things up for his children to be successful, and we don't like that because we still only have space for this narrative to where I came out of poverty and I got rich. Not I had money my whole life. We don't have a psychological space. So Shadur's issue when they're talking about he has an attitude, his attitude is that he was raised with money his whole life and all he knows is money. But see, in the game of football, we're not used to black men who come from money and play football. See, basketball was dealing with this in the 80s. Grant Hill, he come from a good background. Chris Webber come from a good background. But in football, we're not used to black boys or really young black men who come from money, a lot of money, and they play in football. Because football in this country historically, when black people started playing it, was played by lower income, working class black boys. And a lot of them came from single parent households. A lot of them come out of poverty. College football is supported by a lot of black children that come out of poverty. That's what supported these programs. That's why they didn't want them to get no money, because they was able to milk a lot of these black communities and take this football talent and make themselves millionaires and make themselves 100 millionaires. And the black kids wasn't getting no money. So that's why all this stuff with NIL caused the issue, because for years, you just was playing for the hope that you make the NFL and they shoot you a little bit of money up under the table. So when they say that Sanders got an attitude problem, his attitude is that he was raised rich. That's his attitude. He come from money, right? And we not used to black people that come from real money, not fake money, not internet money, real money. The way if he never get drafted, he gonna be all right, right? I saw when I watched the draft the first day, Dion had 2 commercials on the draft. One for Aflac, which is a Fortune 500 company. The second for some type of payment processor, right? They got plenty of money over there. They're not tripping on no money. They not. So if he never plays football don't work out for him, he gonna be all right. His people got bread. They caked up like that. We're not used to that. So when teams are talking to him, they're used to talking to a black child who don't come from a lot, and he just so happy he gonna make the NFL because I'm gonna buy this for my mom and I'm gonna buy this. They already got it. They good. So there is no pressure for him. He just playing because he want to play. And so they're not used to that. I told people this years ago about Donald Trump. I say Donald Trump is a New Yorker from old money. He not gonna act like you. You got to understand that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a New Yorker to a guy from old money. So he not gonna act like a regular person. You taking stuff personal, not realizing how he was raised. People taking some stuff that Shadur does personal and not realizing how he was raised. He was raised with money. Years ago, the Bucks drafted Jameis Winston, right? He done finally worked his career out. He doing his thing. He up there in New York. He doing his thing, right? They did one of those, behind the scenes situations where they go back to where you from and yada, yada, yada. He lived in a row house out there in Bessemer, Alabama. He don't come from no money. Football was the best thing that happened to his family financially, right? Because he got a $20-something million contract from the Bucks just to play for them. Guaranteed money. Shadur don't need that kind of, he don't come from a row house in Bessemer, Alabama. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? That's not his background. So they're not used to that, especially in the game of football, right? And so I think a lot of people, when you're looking at the Sanders, you don't realize that you're looking at a child that comes from money. This is what it is. And so again, we're not used to black children coming from money. And we're also not used to black children to where their father is very, very active in raising them. So they're not telling you no story about how their grandma raised them or how their mama raised them. They're not telling you that story, right? So we don't know where to put them. You know what I'm saying? If they got an issue, they're going to go talk to their daddy. We're not used to that, right? We're not used to that. So we don't know where to put them. So that when they're talking to these people, they don't know where to go. And I know because I dealt with that growing up. Because when I was coming up, and this was way before Shadur was even born, and we would have family teacher conferences at school, and both my parents showed up, them people didn't know how to act. Because their assumption was only my mom was going to show up. My daddy walked right up in there too. They had to change their whole routine for that. So they don't understand sometimes where to place us, and even black people don't know where to place us because why? That's not their experience, right? So that's what I'm trying to tell you is that a lot of this stuff is based on nepotism. When you don't know what nepotism is, you don't know what's going on all around you. And so you'll buy into this idea of, well, I'm going to get the job just because I'm the best for the job. A lot of people don't get jobs like that. They get jobs based on who they know. They get jobs based on the fact that somebody set them up to get the job. They get jobs based on the fact that you know, they got a shoe in for the job and they're going to get the job based on that shoe in. It ain't got nothing to do with how good they are. Right. And we're going to talk about that. So let me go into this nepotism real quick. Let me show you this real quick. Okay. So if you can see this, let me know. This is what we call a coaching tree, right? Where did these coaches come from? So we got Mike Shanahan. We got Gary Kubiak, 06, right? We got Denver and Houston. Let's go to the next slide, right? So Kubiak hires Sherman and he hires Kyle Shanahan, right? Which is Mike Shanahan's son, okay? Let me go and get rid of this real quick. Mike Shanahan's son. Let me zoom this in, right? Then Shanahan's still in Denver. In Houston, you got Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur working for Kubiak in Denver. Mike Sherman goes to A&M. He hires Zach Taylor. Okay? That's 08. In 2010, right? Kubiak still in Houston. Kyle Shanahan working for him. That's Mike Shanahan's son, right? Matt LaFleur working for them. Mike Sherman hires Clint Kubiak, which is Gary Kubiak's son, and Zach Taylor working for them out there at A&M, right out there in Texas, right? College Station. Okay. In 2010, Mike Shanahan, he coaching for Washington because, you know, he coached RG3. He hired his son, Kyle Shanahan, and he got Matt LaFleur out there. Kubiak and Zach Taylor still at A&M. Kubiak Sr. still in Houston. It's 2010. Right? So Washington, that stays constant with his son working for him with Matt LaFleur. Kubiak still in Houston. In 13, Clint Kubiak, he not going to work for Bill Musgrave out there in Minnesota, right? Let's keep going. In Cleveland, Kyle Shanahan, he now goes out there from Washington, and then you get Mike LaFleur, right, which is part of the LaFleur family. He go to Cleveland, okay? Then Kyle Shanahan, he go to Atlanta. Matt LaFleur goes to Atlanta with him. And Mike LaFleur goes to Atlanta. Him, they all from the LaFleur family, right? So they all family related. They come from Cleveland, right? Then Matt LaFleur goes to L.A. Zach Taylor also goes to L.A. Kyle Shanahan, we know now, goes to San Francisco from Atlanta. And then Mike LaFleur goes to San Francisco from Atlanta also. So now you got the head coaches. Matt LaFleur was out there in Green Bay. Kyle Shanahan out there in San Francisco. Zach Taylor become a head coach of the Natty. Offensive coordinator for the Jets is Mike LaFleur. Denver, passing game quarterback coach is Clint Kubiak. Assistant quarterback coach in San Fran is Clay Kubiak. All these people got friendly relationships in the NFL. Right? Where you see the nepotism at? Right? Where is there the nepotism at in this deal? Right? Where is it at? Okay, so what I want you to understand something is that when Shanahan was hired by Kubiak, he was the youngest position coach in the whole NFL. Right? But you're being told that this game is about meritocracy. Right? This game is about you just being the best for the job and you letting the chips fall where they may and the best gonna get the job. Not that these people are building out networks of family to bring their family in. So when Shanahan was hired by Kubiak, he was the youngest position coach in the NFL. So Kubiak brought in a dude, the youngest position coach in the whole NFL, say, yo, I'm going to put you on my staff because why? I know your father because I used to play for your father. Right? And then he eventually ended up working for his father. But you being told everything's about a meritocracy. And if we see a black pilot on the plane because of DEI, we going to believe that the black pilot not qualified. But when you look at an NFL coach, do you believe he's not qualified because he probably got the job because of his family? See the kind of games they play with you? So they'll give you a complex about nepotism. They'll give you a complex about you putting on friends and family. They'll give you a complex about it. Why they engage in it all the time, every day, all day. See what I'm saying? Because they don't want you to do it because why? They don't want to compete in institution. These people have built out an institution to make sure that, you know what? I got a job at the NFL and I know that my family members could also get that same position because these are very well-paid positions. If you want to do the work, they're going to make a lot of money. So if you look at Shanahan, he did a little bit of time as a graduate assistant, then he immediately went up to the NFL. A lot of guys work in college for years, hoping to get a shot. He didn't have to do that because why? His father was already in position. And his father put that call in and made sure his son got a job. That's how that worked. He ain't trying to do no Rooney Rule to get no job. He ain't got to do that. That's what you got to do. You got to do the Rooney Rule to hope that you can get an interview. So Bieniemy still can't get a job. You want to know why Bieniemy can't get a job? Because Bieniemy daddy don't work in the NFL. That's why he can't get no job. And there's no more black coaches like Tony Dungy that's funneling black people through his program to make sure they get jobs, because Dungy put a lot of black coaches on. There's no black coach doing that anymore. No disrespect to him, but ain't nobody doing it the way Dungy did it. So Bieniemy is still on the outside looking in. He can't even get a look, right? Why they just churning these coaches? You telling me Bieniemy could not have done as bad as a job as that dude, that Italian dude with the bald head that coached the Jets, that let Aaron Rodgers just do whatever he want to do? You telling me he couldn't have done that bad, right? Because if he can do that bad, he could have got the job. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So that's what I want you to realize is, for some reason, when black men engage in nepotism, they engage in making sure that they look out for their family, they engage in guiding their family, it becomes really sensitive to a lot of people, including a lot of other black folks. While at the same time saying, you know, I'm a conservative and black men need to raise their kids, yada, yada, yada. But when they do it, all of a sudden now I come to a problem. It's an issue now. They only supposed to raise their kids to a certain level and then let other people raise their children. They're not supposed to raise their kids all the way through. Right? So that's what I want you to understand. Okay? Let's keep going. So Brown's owner, the guy that sounds Shador, right? He started working for a company called Pilot Corporation, right? Pilot Corporation, this is Jimmy Haslam, in 1976. That's a company his father founded. So he was working for the company his father made. He didn't go get a job for some random company, right? Because I'm finna go do my own thing and prove that, you know, I don't have to depend on nobody in my family, right? His father founded the company. In 1980, he was president of sales. So in 4 years, he became, VP of sales. I'm sorry for the typo. In 4 years, he became VP of sales after working for his father's company. You don't think his father being the owner of that company, his father being the founder of that company, had anything to do with that? So sorry for the typo. He became VP of sales in 1980. So in 4 years, he worked himself up from starting there to being VP of sales. He must have been a heck of a salesperson, right? They got a $14 billion family net worth. Right? This who Shador working for. A guy that got a $14 billion net worth of his family. He don't get there if they don't look out for each other. That's not how it works. He don't get there for everybody to just go do their own thing. It don't work that way. Right? So I've said this again, and I'm going to keep saying this. You're competing with groups of people in this world, and the majority of those groups are families. They're not some spinoff like Miss Ross, who comes from a very, very prominent family that allows her to do her own thing. But see, you don't come from a prominent family. You just going to go try to do your own thing. But you don't know that Ross comes from a very prominent family, right? Her father was a very successful person. We know who her mama is, a mama international superstar, right? So she's the byproduct of her family, but you'll go try to imitate her, but you don't come from that kind of family, right? You don't come from that kind of family. You come from a family where everybody's just trying to figure it out and they robbing Peter to pay Paul and they doing a bunch of backbiting. But you'll go try to imitate her. You'll use her as an avatar of how you're supposed to live your life. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? She also worth between $15 and $20 million. A lot of y'all ain't worth $250,000, but y'all gonna try to be like her. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So you're looking at people that are byproducts of their family that allowed them to go out here and live these abstract lifestyles. But you'll try to live the abstract lifestyle, but your family hasn't done that kind of work to allow you to do that. Because if all else fails, so people going to take care of her. She ain't going to be out here by herself. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So again, you're running into successful families. You're seeing the byproduct of people using nepotism within their own family. You're seeing the byproduct of people building out their family network, right? They also building out their social networks, and then they're pushing their family through their social networks to have success. Right? But we are being told that everything's about a meritocracy and you just being the best person for the job. Now, we talked about before, they hyped this book up a lot when it came out. How Asian mothers and they prep their children for success, yada, 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 and nobody had an issue with it. But when a black man does it, it's a problem, right? So we hype this book up. We had whole little think pieces around this book. But when a black man does the same thing with his children, it's an issue. He shouldn't be doing that. He should just let his children go out here in the world and whatever happens, happens, right? So here's the question. Why is there controversy around Deion Sanders guiding his son to success in the NFL? Why is that so controversial? Why is that a big deal? If he knows what goes on in the NFL because he plays so long, what's the problem with him saying, hey, you know what? Let me guide you through this, right? I used to watch First 48. I think it was the one in Miami. And the dude was working there as a detective because his mama was a detective. That's how he got in. So everybody gave him his props and gave him his respect, and they worked with him because why? His mama had worked as a detective for him in Miami-Dade for decades. Everybody knew his mama. So they wouldn't go play with him like that because why? They got to deal with his mama if they do. That's how these things work. But when Deion does it, it's an issue. But that's what everybody else does. And he's not doing nothing illegal. I don't think he's doing anything that lacks integrity. He wants to create the best environment for his sons to be successful. Isn't that what he's supposed to do as a father? But a lot of y'all, and I can tell by when y'all talk, y'all raised to where once a child hit 18, you don't deal with them no more. That's how y'all was raised. Once you get 18, I ain't got to deal with you no more. You don't believe in that you keep supporting your children past being legal adults. Because y'all was raised in households where they just couldn't wait for y'all to get 18 so they could push y'all up out the house. You don't do children like that. Right? Or y'all was also raised to where if the man get the woman pregnant and she decide that she want to have the baby, then you don't have to deal with the child because you didn't want, like, this stuff is weird to me, but everybody different. Everybody raised different. One thing about the internet, it merges a lot of different people. But I've known how a lot of y'all do not believe that you're supposed to really look out for your children. You believe you're just supposed to have kids, and if they work, they work, and if they don't, they don't. Right? If they hit the sports lottery, it works, but you really don't believe you're supposed to really invest in guiding that child towards success. Right? And it takes a lot of work, and even past the children being adults. Right? So again, why is this a controversy? When we see this in other professions, fathers putting their sons in position and guiding their sons and making phone calls and setting their sons up to be successful. We've seen the man is now on their grandson trying to make him a successful NFL quarterback after they did the sons. They on their grandson. We gonna live long enough to see their great grandson do it, right? Because they a family of quarterbacks. That's what they do. They put out quarterbacks. So don't nobody say nothing about that. That's all good. Okay, let's keep going. We talk about this. 16 of the 32 NFL owners inherited their teams, but it's about a meritocracy, right? Right, and that's a Bleacher Report link. You can go look that up. 16 of the 32 NFL owners inherited the teams, but it's all about meritocracy. So the team was passed through them through ownership, right? They family passed the team through them. They didn't have to go buy that team out. They got it through inheritance. But everything's about a meritocracy, right? You're supposed to just be the best for the job and you're going to get picked because that's what the founding fathers wanted. Okay, keep believing that type of stuff, okay? What if there's supposed to be such a merit push, why is there such a strong family presence in the NFL culture? Ask yourself that question. So if we're supposed to just be pushing merit all the time and everything's about merit, how come in the NFL there's such a strong family presence in coaching? How come coaching trees be the same last name over and over and over and over and over again? How come? But everything's supposed to be about merit, the best person for the job. Here's the question, right? If there's such a resistance to, why is there such a resistance to a black man fathering his sons from the same people that claim that black men need to father their sons? And I talked about this before. These same people that's telling you that they so much conservatives and black men need to do this and black people need to do this and we need to have better family values. Then when a black person shows you that that's what they're about, all of a sudden now is he doing too much, right? He doing too much because really there's a resentment of a black family that's really financially successful, right? And they have a man leading the situation. It is being led by a black man. And it's going the way he say it's going to go. That's really what the problem is, because normally what you see is that these kids get a certain age, they get handed off to another group of people. And those groups of people dictate the situation. That's how these things normally work. So the fact that it's seen as Deion is the captain of the ship is what a lot of people got an issue. They don't want to say that, but that's really the issue, right? And their audience also got an issue with it. So that's what they feed to, right? But I sat back and watched the man in senior tell Dago, which is Diego, don't draft my son because I don't want him going there. So they had to do a draft and trade so Eli could go to New York City. I watched them do that, and then nobody say nothing about it, right? Some of y'all don't remember that. I do, right? So Manning Sr. told Diego, don't draft my son, right? Because I don't want him playing in San Diego because they felt like the market was too small. They felt like it was a dead-end team. And Eli Manning was not a world beater at quarterback. He was a good quarterback, but he wasn't a world beater. Let's keep it real. He wasn't as good as Cam in college. To me, he wasn't as good as Vic in college. He was a good quarterback, but he was number 1 overall because his last name was Manning. And his family told them, I don't want you doing it. John Elway is different because John Elway was a superstar, right? He was a dual sport athlete. He could have went and played baseball if he wanted to. He really didn't have to play football. Eli Manning was not a superstar at Ole Miss. He was a good quarterback. He was an NFL quarterback, but he was not a superstar. He definitely wasn't Cam, right? He wasn't. Okay, I would argue he wasn't even good as Lamar in college. But they was able to dictate that through Senior. Senior dictated that. And nobody didn't have an issue with it. Because why? They have a point of reference for that type of situation. They have a point of reference, right? And that didn't hurt Eli Manning from being number 1 overall. They just did a draft and trade, and they got Eli to New York, which is where they wanted him to be. They wanted him to be in that big market. Okay, they also wanted him to be in the NFC. So we talked about Deion's class is new money. So here's the class structure, right? He's new money. He was not raised with money, right? He was raised lower income. He's new money elite. Okay, we heard through the grapevine, and we don't know if it's true. We can't verify it, that the Sanders family is worth around $200 million, right? We know Deion got a contract with Colorado. He making double-digit millions every year for the next few years. We know Shedeur made, I heard, over $15 million playing college football. Over $15 million. He already up, right? They're new money elite, okay? Deion played over a decade in the NFL. Why would he dump his children off to people he does not know and let them be the final word on his young children? Why would he do that? That's what some of y'all would do, but why would he do that? Right? Why would he just dump his children off to a bunch of people he does not know and then let them be the final word on his children? Right? So I just think we're dealing with perspectives on how to raise children. We're dealing with class perspectives, right? And we're dealing with the fact that we don't have a psychological framework to deal with a black man that is doing this type of stuff. So it seems real weird to us. It just seems odd. So we got to find something wrong with it. But now, if it was a black woman, we wouldn't have no issue. We'll be cool with that because, it's a strong black woman. But because it's a black man, all of a sudden now it becomes a point of contention. He's supposed to do that because they comfortable around that black woman because they feel like they can get to her. But it's a man standing in front and say, hey, if you're going to deal with my child, it got to come like this and it got to go like that. Oh, no, we don't want to deal with that. It's hands off. Right? So that's what you really got to ask yourself. Why would he, if with all that experience he has and knowing what kind of games the NFL plays, just hand his child over to a bunch of people and just say, hey, y'all do whatever y'all want to do, right? So you combine to these fake narratives around meritocracy, right? You got a Fox News host that's Secretary of Defense. That's a fact. He's administrating over a budget of almost $1 trillion. The guy's an actor, and he's Secretary of Defense. Okay? I don't know what merit got him that job. I can't tell you, right? The Joint Chiefs is a better fit for that job than him. This guy is not qualified for that position at all under any circumstances. Okay? That's just a reality. It ain't about just military. He's never held an administrative position anywhere near that way he currently has right now. That's like me going from being a bagger to next week I'm the manager of the whole store. That's really where he jumped professionally. He's not qualified for the position. People practice nepotism and people bribe to send their children to certain colleges. Let me show you what I'm talking about before we get up on out of here. So y'all might not remember this. This is from 2019, right? Y'all remember those people was paying those other people to make sure their children went to certain colleges? And a lot of them got convicted of it. Okay? So here's the breakdown. the college admission scandal. So prosecutors have charged more than 50 parents, coaches, and others in the Justice Department's largest ever college admissions case. Many have pleaded not guilty, but a lot of them pleaded guilty. So Edge College and Career Network, William Singer, right? 2 employees. Prosecutors said Mr. Singer bribed standardized test administrators to let the SAT expert correct students' answers and take the test in the student's place. Now, we've been told they get good SAT scores because they just so smarter than us. Ain't that what we've been told? Right? They just so smart and they just do all they work, and that's why they get better SAT scores. But we found out in this scandal that the scores was being falsified, people taking the test in the student's place. All this came out. You see that they don't talk about this no more, but this is a real thing, right? Prosecutor says Mr. Singer bribed athletics officials and coaches at several universities to accept unqualified students based on false documents, right? At these schools, Yale, UCLA, Stanford, right? Southern Cal, Georgetown, Wake Forest. Intermediaries, University of Texas, University of San Diego, which is unindicted, right? Prosecutor said Felicity Huffman and 11 other parents paid Mr. Singer between $15,000 and $100,000. Each circle represents one person. Prosecutor says the actress Lori Loughlin and 14 other parents paid Mr. Singer between $100,000 and $500,000. Okay, this was a whole case. They don't talk about it no more because the narrative is that they get these good scores on the SAT because they just so smart. They just so smart and they just got such good school and they just come from great backgrounds and they just got such a great culture. And that's why they get these good scores. They don't talk about the fact they cheat. They don't talk about that. Okay. So we see how this stuff don't go through. It don't get publicized. They shuffle it on the rug and they go back to the narrative because they needed you to believe that you always got to play catch up ball to them. That's their power, right? And they never really show you and teach you how they really keep their position. I'm not saying you got to do it. I'm saying you don't even know what they're doing, right? You have no idea. They're telling you this is how we are where we're at. But in reality, it's not. They're lying to you about where they're at. They're cheating. They're having people take their people test. They're engaging in nepotism. They having their family members call and make sure they get jobs. They're using their network to make sure people get jobs regardless of whether or not the person's qualified, right? This is what they do. You watch the movie called Casino. The one man was working in the casino. The uncle was the inspector. They fired him. The uncle came to De Niro and said, hey, that's my nephew. He need a job, right? So if you fire him there, he need to work somewhere else, right? And De Niro's like, no, he can't work here. The dude said, well, you don't understand how this goes. I'm the inspector. If I'm telling you our nephew need a job, he need a job. That's how this how they work their system. But they'll tell you, you just got to get the highest scores. You got to be the best of the best. And then you got to go in through the front door and hope your application works. And then if you don't get the job, it just means you weren't good enough. So you're not going to go now try to figure out how to be even better than what you was, but you already good. While they let their people in through the back door because they know this person. They put a phone call in. They got a fake SAT score, all this stuff. There is no meritocracy with these folks, right? So you got to realize the character of the tribes that you're dealing with and not try to make their character something else. Understand the character of the tribes that you are dealing with. And then we as, I don't even want to call it American Black people, we really need to start really examining, right, our psychological perception of Black men and how they raising their children and asking ourselves, how come when a Black man is guiding his children all the way through, because I've seen this with Serena and Venus. I've seen the same situation with their father. I've seen it with the Balls. I've seen it with so many different examples where you have a father who says, you know what, I'm going to be actively involved in how my children are brought up. I'm going to dictate how it's going to go. It's going to go the way I say it's going to go. I'm going to be the authority. And everybody says he's ruining that child's life. Right? But then they also turn around and say Black men ain't raising their kids. So when it's the Asian mama doing it, it's all right. Right? When it's Anglos masterminding their children's success, it's fine. When it's the Black woman doing it, is she the strong Black woman? When it's the Black man doing it, is he doing too much? Right? And we got to really start asking ourselves, how come we see things that way? Okay, so that's pretty much all we're going to talk about. Big up to Shador, like I say, he's at a graveyard, but you know what I'm saying? We going to pray for him, hope God get him through it. You know, everything a learning lesson. He young, he bounced back. But I would never want to go to Cleveland. They're a terrible organization, and that's just a reality of the situation. Okay, so that's going to be it. We're not going to be here long. Get the likes up. The likes are free. Let me go ahead and put this up, and then we're going to read these super chats. So you got any comments, questions, disagreements, let me know, and then we're going to get up on out of here. You know, you got an Indian guy from a caste system that puts him at the top of the caste system by his birth, right? And he doesn't reject the caste system, telling you that he believes in a meritocracy. But if you don't know that he comes from a caste system that puts him at the top of the caste system based on his birth, not based on his work, and he participates in that caste system, and then you entertain from him that he believes in meritocracy. So they know what kind of Negroes will put these people in front of. Because I would say, hold on, big dog, that don't add up because your own religion don't practice meritocracy. And you are an adherent of that religion that tells people if you're born on a certain level of society, we can pretty much do you any kind of way we want to do because that way you was born. You can't even work your way out of the situation. So you're not going to sit and talk to me about no meritocracy because you don't believe in meritocracy because you have not rejected that religion. So they know not to put that man in front of me. They got to put him in front of people that's going to entertain that. Right? So that's what I'm saying. A lot of y'all don't really, it's just interesting to me the stuff that y'all go for and the stuff y'all take to, but then the stuff y'all don't take to. But that's the most ridiculous thing in the world to where a dude that comes out of a religion that tells you, well, based on where you're born, you're stuck there until you die. And you got to try to hope that you can reincarnate yourself into a higher level. But then they're going to turn around and tell you, well, you know what? I believe in meritocracy. No, you don't, because your religion don't believe in meritocracy. Right? And you can't get saved out of the caste system. You're in it until you die and hope that you can reincarnate yourself out of it. Come on, man, stop it. This stuff makes no sense. So if you want to get questions, comments, disagreements, that's pinned in the chat. We're going to read these super chats, man, and we're going to keep it moving. So Cedric Ware, man, I appreciate the $50 super sticker, man. Really appreciate that. You're going to be the sponsor of the show. And big up to you and what you got going on. So really appreciate it, bro. Terrence, man, appreciate the $4.99 super chat. Appreciate you for being a mod. Ray Gun, man, appreciate the $2 super chat. Ayala, if I pronounced that correctly, appreciate it. Resurrected Minds, appreciate the $2 super chat. Okay, we got 2 people in Salt Lake City, Utah. All right. What's up to Dr. Chaz out there in Conroe? Exactly, GC. They already got an idea, especially in the first round. They already got their whole first round scripted. So there's no way in the world that, like, we don't know or have a good idea that Shador going to get drafted first round. That's already been scripted. It's already been scripted out, especially the first, like, 20 picks. So, like I said, it's good content, though, because it's going to allow them to create content for the comeback story, which is what people want to see. But he never, to me, graded out as a first-round pick, right? He holds the ball too long. That's his biggest problem. But it's not his fault because they didn't have a running game the whole time he was there. They couldn't figure out how to run the ball. So he had to hold the ball to let plays develop. He got to fix that in the next level, right? But maybe Cleveland, I don't know if what's his name is still there. They should have a better running game, regardless of who he's playing with, than what he had at Colorado. Colorado had no running game. That was terrible how bad they were in the football. So it just put him under a lot of pressure. But he never, to me, graded out, especially as a top of the first round. He was a third-round pick to me at best. And no wrong with that. People act like if you don't go first, like you're a bust. It's hard to make the NFL at any round. Like, people they got to really get their head. Like, it's not easy to make an NFL team, bro. Like, them people can play football for real. Like, they good like that. So, you know, the idea that if you don't go first, you a bust, like, people got to be crazy. It is very difficult to make an NFL team. A lot of dudes that can really play get cut every year, and they can play ball. So, Michelle N., here go your opportunity. Come through. Do I think Johnny Manziel would have a better chance if he didn't go to Cleveland? No, Johnny Manziel is a drug addict. I think anywhere he would have went, he would have still been a drug addict, right? So we could have sent Johnny Manziel to Mars. He'd have been a drug addict on Mars, right? He was a drug addict when he got drafted. It didn't matter where he went until he dealt with his drug issue. That was going to be his stumbling block. So I don't think where he went changed that. I think Cleveland, being who they were, took a chance on him with all that baggage that he had. But yeah, Johnny Manziel was a drug addict when he went to Cleveland. He admitted that. So I don't think that would impact it. I think them being who they are, why they drafted him as high as they drafted him. Because I didn't have a grade on him that high. What's up to Miss Alexander? Most definitely, Miss Al. They're not used to black fathers doing this. It's like a fish out of water. Definitely. Because Reese, baby, it's the oldest sports, how do you call it, trope in the world where the coach makes his son the quarterback. Anybody that played football has seen that a million times. Where the coach of the team say, my son gonna play quarterback. Right? I've seen that a million times in sports. That's not even like abnormal. Right? So Shadur's been a quarterback his whole life. Why wouldn't his father say, hey, I want to make sure my son's being set up for success? You know, so it is what it is. But that's the oldest sports trope in the world. Miss Erica, what's up to Miss Erica? Every time I call my dad, teacher got brand new real quick. Yeah, they see that. They're not expecting a man to show up, especially by the black child. That throws them off because they have a perception in their mind of how they're supposed to go. So when they see a black man show up about a black child, okay, we got to change up how we've been doing stuff. Right? Because that's not the expectation. Okay, they got Shiloh Sanders. They need defense, but he's old, so let's see how that works out for him. They need defense, though, because they drafted pretty much defense, I think, after that first pick of wide receiver. But he's old. Anytime you draft a player that old, the question is, has all his upside already been extinguished in college? But where they're drafting him at, again, we talked about, they're not on the hook to bring him into camp because they don't have to pay him a lot of money. Because he'll probably go into camp without a deal and just get camp money and see if he makes the team. So big up to him. But, we got to ask ourselves, at his age, what's his upside, right? Because he's not 21 years old. You see what I'm saying? But big up to him. He on the Bucks, and he playing for a good coach. So let's see if it works out for him. He playing for a good defensive coach. Definitely. Yeah, he did if you watch that show Landman, he did like a monologue in that show where he talked about making sure that all his children was working with him once he got to a certain age, right? So he definitely does that. And him and his sons, they running the Cowboys into the ground as a football team. They making a lot of money, but the team is terrible because they doing what they want to do. So the link is up there. So like I said, person that wanted to come through is pinned in the chat, right? The link to come on. So VM says, if Dion didn't guide and help his children, I would give him the side eye. My parents gave us favor. Any connection they had, I'm thankful for. I feel you. I feel you. So Magneto says, WD and the family is the Anio family, the Rock, and the Samoan bloodlines. He has all his cousins in wrestling, pulling minimum $500K first year. I feel you. Yeah, definitely, Miss Brandy Williams. They do cheat in college, right? They do cheat a lot. It's just what they do. But like I said, you got to know the tribe that you're dealing with. We got tribes on this planet that literally wrote themselves into the Bible. Like, you just got to know what you're dealing with. Like, literally, they say, yeah, we're in the Bible. and not one part of the Bible took place in Western Europe. So you just got to know what you're dealing with at the end of the day. So, you just got to know what kind of tribe you're dealing with. Educated disciple, man, appreciate it, $2. So Lawrence Johnson, I appreciate the $2. So didn't Brady get drafted in the late rounds? Thought he did get drafted. Yeah, the Harbaugh is a good example. Exactly. Harbaugh is another example. The one that's for B-more, to me, he can't really coach like that. Right? But they another example. Right? So that's 100% correct. Them Harbaughs. Yeah, definitely. You see it in Pee Wee football. You see it in high school football. A lot of times I've seen guys not been allowed to compete at quarterback because the coach is very adamant that his son going to play quarterback because he wants his son to be a big-time quarterback. Right? I've seen it over and over and over again. So it happens. It happens in sports all the time. Miss Erica says they might have been a favor calling because he had soldier surgery. Yeah. I mean, like I say, it's no wrong with it either. Dion at least want to get him out there in camp and let's see if maybe he can hang on. Maybe something could work. But again, at his age, Erica, you got to figure out, does he have any upside left? You know what I'm saying? But if it's his dream to be on an NFL team, put the call in to Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles said, okay, we'll bring him into camp. If it work, it work. If it don't, it don't. And at least he got into camp because I had a dude that moved me. He played for Troy, and he was able to get drafted by the Bills real late in the round. And he said he didn't care that he got cut. He just was happy he was able to go to camp and say he was at a Bills camp because he played for Troy. That's down there in I think it's in Alabama, right? They good football program. They put out Uzi used to play for and also put out DeMarcus. I think DeMarcus Ware played for them too. And he was like, yeah, man, I was just happy I was able to go to camp, and I think he might have been one of the first cuts. But it was just like he was just happy he was able to get into that Bills camp. So Shiloh may just want to say, hey, man, I was able to get into a camp because he's been playing football his whole life, right? But it's just at his age, we got to ask if there's any upside. But at the same time, there was a quarterback that got drafted before Shadur that was 26 years old. And so we're drafting a 26-year-old quarterback before we're drafting a quarterback in their early 20s. That don't really make a lot of sense to me because at 26, he's not going to have no upside, in my opinion. Right? He's just not going to have a lot of upside left. So big up to Shiloh. He playing for the Bucks, but let's see how it go out for him. He got to work on his cover skills, especially in that division that he in. Gigi says people always speak on the aspect of nepotism when the folks not qualified. Yeah, I feel you. Make sure I got all the super chats. Okay, so it looks like the lady that wanted to come through fell off. So y'all stay good, man. Be safe. And they got their little story for the weekend. So let's see what they talk about tomorrow. Because like I said, it's interesting that they spend all the time talking about somebody that didn't get drafted as opposed to the people that actually did get drafted. There's some good players in this draft. It's no transcendent world beaters, at least that we know of right now. But it is some good players in this draft. But next year is really supposed to be the quarterback draft. So that's why with Sanders, he got to get his life together because they got 2 picks first round. He got a year to figure out what he finna do. So it's kind of like a show and prove scenario. And he going to be probably second string, maybe, if he lucky. He not better than the white dude that's there. He used to play for the Ravens. He not better than him. The starter he's done, but he got that pretty wife, so he ain't tripping. He gonna go live off that 240 and that pretty wife he got. So it's an opportunity there, but I wouldn't want anybody to have to play for Cleveland. Cleveland's a terrible organization. They just are. They're bad. Detroit finally figured it out. Cleveland still hasn't figured it out, and I wouldn't want nobody to have to play for them. I would prefer him to be in Atlanta, a better run organization, more opportunity, and his attitude won't throw nobody off. You know what I'm saying? It won't. Where in other markets, his attitude could throw people off. He can do whatever he want to do down here. We're not tripping. You know what I'm saying? Because it's Atlanta. So let's see how it is, right? But I wouldn't want anybody to have to play for the Browns in a prove me situation. I would prefer they go there and just get a contract. Yeah, go Browns. Yeah. I mean, we can say that till 2050. We hold our breath and wait for it to happen. We'll probably suffocate first, right? So y'all be easy, man. Stay safe. Talk to y'all later.